Good morning, Mr. Herman here once again with a video in our Unit 4 quadratics. Today we're going to be talking about completing the square. So our last video focused on factoring, which is a way of going from standard form into factored form, which highlighted the x-intercepts of our quadratics. Now we're going to go from standard form into vertex form. So just as a reminder, our standard form was y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to take this into vertex form, which we have seen before, which is y equals a times parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Now, if you recall, what will vertex form show us from a quadratic equation? Hopefully you said that the key feature that vertex form will show us is the vertex. Okay, mathematicians like to name things rather logically as often as they can. So, just like we did factoring, we're going to focus on the algorithm. In class, we focused on the algebra tiles, but here we're going to use the algorithm. So this process, this pattern, we're going to use every single time that we're asked to rewrite a quadratic equation into vertex form. Okay, so we're going to start off just like we did with our factoring and identifying a, b, and c. So it's the same process here. Our coefficient of our x squared is a, and that's going to be 1. Our coefficient in front of our x is our b, which is 6. And our coefficient in front, our constant at the end, the number that's by itself, no variable, is going to be c. Make sure that you always keep that sign. If it's negative or positive, it's going to stay there. Now we're going to take a look at determining this value of b over 2 squared. So this is going to be an important component of our vertex form. We're going to call this a perfect square binomial that we're going to create. And this is part of the pattern that we will see. So b over 2 squared equals, there's our b value, 6 over 2. Oh, that one's dying on me. I'll press with a different green. So 6 over 2 parentheses squared. So 3 squared. And I'm going to leave it as 3 squared. Okay? This is going to hopefully be helpful in rewriting this into our perfect square binomial in just a couple minutes. Okay? So we're going to now insert 2 blanks on each side of the c value. Okay? The first is going to be plus, and the second is going to be minus. So I'm going to take my equation I have up here. I'm just going to take the expression. So x squared plus 6x plus blank minus 14 minus blank. So this is important because the plus blank and the minus blank are going to help me balance my expression here. Okay? Since I don't have an equal symbol here, I can do plus and minus. Okay, I got to do it on the same side. So now we're going to fill in that blank with the value of b over 2 squared. Okay, so we'll go x squared plus 6x plus blank minus 14 minus blank. And then I'm going to pop in what we came up with above. So we have 3 squared plus 3 squared minus 3 squared. So if I have plus 9 minus 9, that makes 0. So I can do that. Okay, nothing has changed. It just looks different. It's a creative 0 is what we'll call it. So now what I want to do is I want to rewrite the first 3 terms as x plus b over 2 in parentheses squared. So I'm going to highlight this part right here, this part right here. I'm going to bring them down. So x plus 3 parentheses squared. Now I'm going to combine these numbers. And so this one's going to be 9. Negative 14 minus 9 means minus 23. And look at that, we're in vertex form. Okay, now I need to pull out my vertex. We'll pull out our vertex real quick here. And we'll go with orange. Ooh. All right, with orange, there's our H, there's our K. Now we remember that if it's with the X, it does the opposite of what we think it should do. So this is, I see plus, so I think minus. So minus 3, comma. And if it's outside my x parentheses, it does what I think it should do. So I think it should be minus 23. And we completed the square. Okay? The big thing comes down to this b over 2 squared piece. If we remember to calculate that and to plug that in, or not plug it in, but fill in our blanks, then it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to a vertex form. So we'll do a couple more examples before giving y'all some time to do a couple on your own. All right. So look at this example here. First, we're going to identify A, B, and C, and I'll have you do that right now. So hopefully you came up with A equals 1. I don't see a number, so that's going to be 1. B is going to be -4. Remember, you keep that sign, and then C is +9. Okay, that's always where we want to start. Now, let's find our B over 2 squared. So B over 2 squared, B is -4. Got to keep those parentheses. Now that's going to be -4 divided by 2 is -2, which we'll just keep it as that. -2 in parentheses squared. Notice how I'm keeping that as -2. Okay, that's going to be important in a bit. All right, let's go ahead and go on to our blanks. Let's plug our blanks in there. We've got x squared minus 4x plus blank plus 9 minus blank. So let's just do it again. And as you become more comfortable, you don't need to have both of these steps in here. I just like to put them in there so we see what the process is going to look like. Now, in my blank, I plug in my b over 2 squared. Okay, so that was -2 squared and -2 squared. Now notice how I'm keeping my parentheses. If I have a negative that's getting squared, I need to have my parentheses there. Okay, so let's go ahead and rewrite into our perfect square binomial. Okay, so I've got my x being squared, my -2 being squared. So x minus 2 squared. And then we've got our +9 and minus this, which is going to be a +4. So 9 minus 4 gives me +5. Now something that you'll notice is that the sign in the perfect square binomial and the sign of my b term are always going to match. Okay, it's -4x, so it's got to be x minus 2. If they don't match, you've got a problem. All right, let's pull our vertex from here. Once again, h and k, opposite of what I think it should do for my h. So it says -2, so it's actually going to be +2. And then I see +5, and that does what it's supposed to. All right, let's work through one more example before you all give this a shot on your own. All right, I'm going to have you identify A, B, and C once again. Okay, hopefully you chose A as 1, B is 6, and C is -14. Let's determine the value of B over 2 squared. All right, I'll have you all do that real quick. Okay, and so now we've got B is 6, and that's going to give us 3 squared, and we'll just leave it like that. If you said 9, that's fine. But hopefully you've seen the pattern of why we like to keep it as 3 squared. Now, let's go into our blanks. X squared plus 6x plus blank minus 14 minus blank. All right, looks good. Let's do it again. My purple's dying. I'll try to retire this marker. All right, so let's go ahead and fill that in with our b over 2 squared, which we said was 3 squared. Since it's positive, I don't need to keep the parentheses. Now we're going to make our perfect square binomial. So once again, I pull whatever is being squared here. And then I combine what I have left over here. Okay, so that's 3 squared is 9, so -14 minus 9, and once again a -23. Okay, let's identify our vertex here. We're just going to point out that h and our k, opposite of what it should do, so -3, and then it does what it should do, -23. Okay, So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you try to do this first one with f of x equals x squared plus 8x minus 7 on your own, and then we'll check to see what vertex form you get there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work through this one. I'm not going to detail everything that I do, but I am going to solve this into vertex form. So I have b over 2 squared, so 8 over 2 squared, which is 4 squared. Now I'm going to write my form down here. I'm still going to put my blanks here, of course. I always got to do that. So x squared plus 8x plus blank minus 7 minus blank. Let's fill in those blanks real quick. We've got 4 squared, 4 squared. So I'm going to pull from here my squared terms. I'm going to pick those and go x plus 4 parentheses squared. Now I'm going to combine my last two terms, and that's going to give me 16. So negative 7 minus 16 is minus 23. Mr. Herman has a thing for, I guess, minus 23 on this one. And then let's find our vertex as well. While we're at it, we might as well. H and K, opposite of what we think it should do, what we think it should do. So hopefully you came up with x plus 4 20 squared minus 23. Now I'm going to have you work on the next equation real quick. All right, so let's go and check this one. I've got a negative b value here, so I've got to be a little bit careful, because that's all. If that b value is negative, then my perfect square binomial, those two numbers that are getting squared, must also be negative. Now we're going to put our blanks in here. So we've got negative 5 squared. Notice how I still keep my parentheses since I have a negative here. Now we're going to make that perfect square binomial by taking those two numbers that are squared. I got x minus 5 minus, oh my gosh, Mr. Herman, you're mixing the two problems up. This should be minus 8, or minus 10. Okay, there we go. So x minus 5 squared. Let's combine our plus 21, combine this one, which is going to be minus 25. So 21 minus 25 is minus 4. And then we'll pull out our vertex as well. And then we're going to get, does the opposite of what it should do, so it should be positive, does what it should do, negative 4. All right, so there's our algorithm for completing the square, which puts us into our vertex form of an equation, which tells us our vertex. So go ahead and work on the homework and look back at the notes to make sure that you understand how to do the algorithm.